The air in the English countryside is thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient iron. For 30 years, a giant has been sleeping under a tattered blue tarp, hidden behind a crumbling brick wall. It is a 1970s Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, once the pinnacle of automotive engineering, now a tragic monument to neglect. The white paint, once as pure as a bride's gown, is now a map of sorrow, yellowed by UV rays and scarred by deep, orange veins of rust that crawl across the fenders like a slow-moving fire. The Spirit of Ecstasy, the iconic silver lady on the hood, is covered in green oxidation, her wings frozen in a silent scream for help. This isn't just a car restoration, it's a rescue mission. Can a vehicle this far gone ever feel the asphalt beneath its tires again? Or is this just an expensive exercise in futility? We are about to strip this legend to its bones and face the cancer of rust head-on. But before we pick up the first wrench, we need you on this journey with us. If you love seeing legends return to life, please hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a thumbs up to help the algorithm find more car lovers, and leave a comment below. Have you ever seen a Rolls-Royce in this bad of a condition? Share this video with your friends who think they can fix anything. Every bubble in the paint tells a story of a winter storm. Every crack in the leather interior speaks of a summer spent baking in a forgotten shed. The tires have long since merged with the dirt, flat and rotted, holding the weight of a 2-ton ghost. As we begin to peel back the layers of grime, the true horror of the situation becomes clear. This isn't just surface rust. This is structural decay. This is the challenge of a lifetime. The man standing before this heap of rusted steel is Julian. At 30 years old, he represents a new generation of British craftsmen. He doesn't just see a broken car, he sees a puzzle that needs to be solved. Julian grew up in his father's workshop, surrounded by the smell of oil, gasoline, and burnt metal. While other kids his age were playing video games, Julian was learning the difference between a Whitworth and a metric bolt. He is a man of few words, preferring the rhythmic clinking of his tools to provide the soundtrack of his life. Julian walks around the Rolls-Royce, his fingers tracing the jagged edges of the rusted door sills. He knows that every part of this car was hand-built in Crewe, England, decades ago. To restore it properly, he must match that original level of obsession. His workshop is a sanctuary of precision. LED lights reflect off polished floors, and tools are organized with surgical exactness. He takes a deep breath, the cold morning air filling his lungs, and puts on his leather apron. The task ahead is daunting. A Rolls-Royce of this era is a labyrinth of hydraulic lines, complex electrical systems, and bespoke mechanical parts that haven't been manufactured in half a century. Julian knows that for every hour spent welding, there will be 10 hours spent researching and sourcing. But he has the patience of a saint and the hands of a master. He looks at the camera, a small, confident smile playing on his lips. He knows the secret that the rust is trying to hide. Underneath all that decay, there is still the heart of a champion waiting to beat again. The journey of 1,000 miles, or in this case, 1,000 welds, begins now. The first real step in any restoration isn't picking up a wrench, it's picking up a flashlight. Julian moves the beam of light across the underside of the Silver Shadow, and the sight is enough to make a lesser mechanic weep. The Rolls-Royce features a highly complex monocoque construction, meaning the body and the frame are one. In a car like this, rust isn't just an eyesore, it's a structural death sentence. Julian uses a small hammer to tap along the sills. Instead of the solid thud of British steel, he hears the hollow, crunchy sound of iron moth, the nickname for the oxidation that has turned this luxury car into a brittle wafer. He moves to the wheel arches. Here, the white paint is bubbled up in large, ugly blisters. When he presses his thumb against one, the metal simply gives way, crumbling into a fine orange powder that coats his gloves. "It's a disaster," Julian mutters to himself, his British accent echoing in the quiet garage. He brings out a borescope, a tiny camera on a flexible wire, and feeds it into the boxed sections of the chassis. On the monitor, he sees the true horror. Standing water has been sitting inside the frame for years, causing the metal to rot from the inside out. It's like looking at a scan of a patient with advanced cancer. He then turns his attention to the hydraulic system. Rolls-Royces of this era used a high-pressure system licensed from Citroën to manage the braking and the self-leveling suspension. Julian spots the telltale signs of green mineral oil leaking from a perished line, mixing with the rust to create a toxic, swampy sludge. Every component he looks at, the bushings, the brake calipers, the steering rack, is seized by time and moisture. He records every finding in a leather-bound notebook, mapping out the war zone he is about to enter. He knows that to save this car, he will have to cut away more than 40% of its original metal. It is a daunting realization, but Julian's eyes remain fixed. He isn't looking at what the car is right now, he's looking at what it will be. He envisions the smooth, white panels and the silent glide of the suspension. But between that vision and the current reality lies a mountain of work, a river of sweat, and a literal ton of rusted iron. The disassembly begins not with a bang, but with a spray of penetrating oil. Julian knows that forcing a seized bolt on a Rolls-Royce is a sin. If you snap a grade 8 vintage fastener, you might spend 3 days trying to find a replacement. He moves methodically, starting with the bright work. The chrome bumpers, heavy enough to require 2 people to carry, are carefully unbolted. As they come off, they reveal even more hidden rot in the mounting points. Julian wraps each piece of chrome in soft microfiber towels. Even though they are pitted and dull, they are the jewelry of the car, and they must be treated with royal respect. Next comes the iconic Parthenon-style grille. This is the face of the Rolls-Royce, a hand-soldered masterpiece of stainless steel. Julian spends nearly an hour just on the delicate linkages that connect the grille to the hood release. Every clip is photographed, every washer is bagged and labeled. This is the part of the job that many YouTubers skip, but for Julian, it is the most important. Reassembly is only possible if the disassembly is perfect. As the grille is removed, the car begins to lose its identity. Without its face, it looks like any other scrap heap, but Julian feels a strange sense of relief. He is finally getting under the skin of the beast. He moves to the lights, the heavy glass headlamps and the delicate Lucas-made indicators. The wiring behind them is a nightmare of Lucas, Prince of Darkness engineering. The cloth insulation on the wires has become brittle and snaps like dry twigs in his fingers. He realizes he will have to rewire the entire front end of the car from scratch. As the floor fills with parts and the car becomes a skeleton, it's a good time to remind you, if you're finding this technical breakdown fascinating, make sure to like this video and share it with your car-loving community. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the moment this skeleton gets its skin back. By the end of the day, the workshop floor is a graveyard of white panels, rusted bolts, and rotted rubber seals. Julian stands back, wiping grease from his forehead with the back of his hand. The Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow is now stripped of its dignity, sitting on jack stands like a picked-over carcass. But to Julian, the car feels lighter. The weight of the unknown is gone. Now, he knows exactly what he's fighting against. The stripping phase is over. The surgery is about to begin. The workshop is silent, save for the slow, rhythmic clicking of a heavy-duty chain hoist. Julian stands over the engine bay of the Rolls-Royce, which now looks like a cavernous, grease-stained wound. The engine, the legendary 6.75-liter L-Series V8, is a massive lump of aluminum and iron that has occupied this space since the Nixon administration. But today, it is leaving. Julian has spent the last 6 hours disconnecting the arteries of the beast, the thick, perished coolant hoses that crumbled like charcoal in his hands, the brittle fuel lines, and the labyrinthine throttle linkages that were hand-adjusted by a craftsman in Crewe 50 years ago. He checks the mounting bolts one last time. They are stubborn, fused to the frame by half a century of heat cycles and road salt. He uses a long breaker bar, leaning his weight into it until, crack, the seal of time is broken. As the engine begins to lift, the car's front suspension groans, rising up as it is relieved of the nearly 900-pound burden. Julian watches the clearances with the eyes of a hawk. In a Rolls-Royce, the tolerances are incredibly tight. One wrong move and the heavy engine block will swing, crushing the delicate inner wings or snapping the steering column. "Steady now," he whispers, his hand on the cold, oily valve cover. The engine is filthy, covered in a thick sludge, made of leaked oil and decades of English dust. It looks more like an anchor from an old ship than a precision power plant. But as it clears the engine bay and hangs suspended in the air, Julian sees past the grime. He sees the potential. He sees the engineering genius that made these engines famous for being able to run a coin on its edge without it falling over. But that was then. Now, the engine is seized. It hasn't breathed in decades. Julian lowers it onto a heavy-duty steel stand, his boots clicking on the concrete. He wipes a smear of black oil from his cheek. The heart is out, but it is cold and silent. To bring it back, He will have to go deeper into the mechanical soul of this machine than he ever has before. If the engine is the heart, the interior is the soul, and this soul is in purgatory. Opening the heavy doors of the Silver Shadow releases a scent that Julian knows all too well, a mixture of old cigar smoke, damp wool, and the unmistakable, sickly sweet smell of rotting leather. This was once a cabin where lords and captains of industry sat in total silence. Now, it is a home for mice and mold. Julian begins the delicate process of gutting the luxury. He starts with the seats, heavy, spring-loaded thrones wrapped in Connolly leather that was once cream-colored but is now stained a ghostly mottled gray. As he unbolts the driver's seat, the leather cracks and groans, complaining about being moved after so many years of stillness. Underneath the seats, he finds the archaeology of the car's past, a rusted British penny from 1974, a faded parking ticket from a London garage, and a rotted silk scarf. These small items remind Julian that this car was once a member of a family, a witness to a life lived in high style. But the sentimentality ends when he peels back the Wilton wool carpets. Beneath the thick, sodden fabric, the floorboards are a disaster. The insulation has acted like a sponge, holding moisture against the metal for decades. In some places, Julian can see the workshop floor through the holes in the car. Next comes the dashboard, a masterpiece of burr walnut veneer. In a Rolls-Royce, the wood is book-matched, meaning the grain on the left side perfectly mirrors the grain on the right. But the moisture has caused the lacquer to milk and the wood to peel away from the backing. Julian handles these pieces as if they were ancient parchment. If he breaks one, the symmetry is lost forever. This is a delicate, heartbreaking process. If you're feeling the tension of this restoration, make sure to comment below. Would you keep the original wood or replace it with something modern? And don't forget to like and subscribe to see if Julian can save this royal cabin. By the time the interior is empty, the car is a hollow shell. No seats, no wood, no carpet, just a rusted steel cage. The ghost of luxury has been exorcised, leaving behind a cold, empty space that Julian must now rebuild from nothing. The car is no longer a car, it is a tub. Julian has loaded the stripped shell onto a heavy-duty trailer to take it to a specialist for media blasting. This is the most terrifying moment for any restorer. The white paint, though cracked and ugly, is currently hiding 1,000 secrets. Media blasting, using high-pressure air to fire tiny glass beads or crushed walnut shells at the body, will strip away every atom of paint, filler, and rust. It will reveal the naked truth of what Julian has actually bought. In the blasting booth, Julian wears a pressurized suit that makes him look like an astronaut. The roar of the compressor is deafening. As he sweeps the nozzle across the roof, the English white paint disappears in a cloud of dust, revealing the silver-gray steel beneath. It's a violent, transformative process. Decades of history are erased in seconds. As the blast reaches the lower sills, the truth is finally revealed. Huge sections of the metal simply vanish, turned into dust because they were nothing but laced, rust held together by old paint. When the dust settles and the car is blown clean with compressed air, Julian stands back to inspect the results. The Rolls-Royce is now a silver shadow in a literal sense, a raw, matte gray ghost of its former self. The damage is extensive. The rear wheel arches are almost entirely gone, and the base of the A-pillars looks like Swiss cheese. But there is a silver lining. The main roof structure and the scuttle are solid. The car's skeleton is still there, even if its skin is full of holes. For the first time, Julian can see the original lead loading, the way the craftsmen at the factory used molten lead to smooth out the joins in the bodywork. It is a testament to a lost art. Julian runs his hand over the cold, bare metal. The past has been blasted away. The cancer has been identified. Now the healing, the welding, the shaping, and the grinding can finally begin. The Rolls-Royce is at its absolute lowest point. From here, every move Julian makes will be a step toward perfection. The workshop is filled with a bright, flickering blue light that dances against the whitewashed walls. Julian, wearing a heavy leather welding mask and protective sleeves, is hunched over the rear wheel arch of the Rolls-Royce. The cancer of rust has been cut away, leaving a jagged, gaping hole that would terrify a weekend hobbyist. But for Julian, this is where the true craftsmanship begins. He isn't using cheap, pre-made patch panels ordered from a catalog. Those don't exist for a car of this rarity. Instead, He is using a sheet of high-quality 18-gauge cold-rolled steel, a vintage English wheel, and a set of wooden forming mallets. He begins by shrinking and stretching the metal. The English wheel groans as Julian passes the steel through the high-pressure rollers, slowly inducing a subtle, three-dimensional curve that must perfectly match the original lines of the silver shadow. It is a slow, meditative process. He stops every few minutes to offer the piece up to the car, checking the fit with a pair of calipers. "The metal has a memory," he says to the camera, his voice muffled by the mask. "If you force it, it will eventually fight back. You have to coax it into the shape it wants to be." Once the panel is shaped to perfection, the welding begins. Julian uses a TIG welder for its precision and clean finish. He tacks the metal every 2 inches to prevent heat warping, a major risk on the large, flat panels of a Rolls-Royce. The smell of ozone and burning metal fills the air as the sparks fly. After the welding comes the grinding. Julian uses a series of abrasive discs, moving from coarse to fine, until the seam between the old British steel and the new metal is completely invisible to the touch. He runs his bare hand over the repair. It is smooth, cold, and solid. This is the surgery that ensures this car won't just look good for a year, but will survive for another century. He isn't just fixing a car, he is rewriting its history, replacing the rot of neglect with the strength of modern metallurgy. Every weld is a commitment to excellence, a silent promise to the original engineers in Crewe that their masterpiece will not be forgotten. With the exterior metalwork progressing, Julian turns the Rolls-Royce onto a heavy-duty rotisserie. This allows him to flip the car 180 degrees, exposing the belly of the beast at eye level. It is a grim sight. Decades of road salt and moisture have turned the undercarriage into a landscape of flaking rust and perished rubber. But now that the shell has been blasted, Julian has a clean, if fragile, canvas to work on. He begins by reinforcing the main chassis rails. These are the bones of the car, and they must be perfectly straight and incredibly strong to support the massive weight of the V8 and the luxury interior. He applies a high-zinc cold galvanizing spray to the raw steel, followed by a thick layer of epoxy primer. This isn't the spray paint you find at a hardware store. This is industrial-grade protection designed for North Sea oil rigs. Julian is obsessed with over-engineering this part of the car. He knows that no one will ever see the underside of this Rolls-Royce once it's finished, but he works on it with the same intensity as the exterior. We are now reaching the heart of this transformation. If you are amazed by the level of detail Julian puts into the parts that no one sees, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who appreciates true, overbuilt engineering, and tell us in the comments, is Julian crazy for going this deep? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the final reveal. Julian then moves on to the veins of the car, the hydraulic lines. Because this car uses a high-pressure system for both brakes and suspension, the lines must be flawless. He bends new cupronickel tubing by hand, following the original factory routing with millimeter precision. He replaces the rotted rubber bushings with modern polygraphite versions that will offer a smoother ride without the risk of future decay. As the black, satin finish undercoating is applied, the chassis begins to look factory fresh. The orange, crumbly mess of the past is gone, replaced by a solid, protected foundation. The car is no longer a fragile relic, it is becoming a powerhouse. Julian stands back, his clothes covered in black overspray, and looks at the underside of the car. It is a sea of perfect black and gleaming copper. The foundation is set. Now, it's time to bring back the power. Back on the engine stand, the 6.75-liter V8 looks like a discarded industrial pump. Julian begins the autopsy. He removes the massive cylinder heads, revealing the pistons that have been frozen in time for 30 years. The oil inside has turned into a thick, tar-like substance that smells of ancient chemicals. Julian uses a specialized chemical soak to soften the carbon deposits, carefully freeing each piston one by one. This is a high-stakes moment. If a piston ring snaps or a cylinder wall is scored, the cost of the restoration will skyrocket. Fortunately, the Rolls-Royce luck is with him. The cylinders are in remarkably good condition, a testament to the high-quality alloys used by the factory. Julian uses a micrometer to measure the bore of each cylinder, checking for ovality, the slight warping that happens over hundreds of thousands of miles. He records the measurements. They are within 1/1000th of an inch of factory spec. "They really don't build them like this anymore," he remarks, cleaning a piston with a brass brush until the aluminum shines like silver. He then moves to the crankshaft. This is the spine of the engine, and it is a massive, forged steel component that weighs as much as a small motorcycle. Julian inspects the bearing surfaces for any signs of heat damage or spun bearings. Everything looks solid, but solid isn't enough for Julian. He sends the crank out to be dynamically balanced and micro-polished. Meanwhile, he spends hours at his workbench with a set of tiny picks and brushes, cleaning every oil gallery and coolant passage. He knows that even a single grain of sand or a flake of old rust left inside the engine could lead to a catastrophic failure 500 miles down the road. He treats every bolt as if it were a piece of jewelry, cleaning the threads and checking for stretch. The engine block, once a greasy black lump, is now a gleaming piece of industrial art, painted in the correct Rolls-Royce black enamel. The heart is clean, the parts are ready, and the precision assembly, where every clearance is checked 3 times, is about to begin. The beast is ready to find its voice again. The engine stand is now the center of the universe in Julian's workshop. The 6.75-liter V8 block, painted in a deep, glossy ceramic black, looks like a piece of industrial jewelry. Julian is currently installing the valve train, a process that requires the steady hands of a surgeon and the patience of a watchmaker. Each of the 16 pushrods is inspected for straightness by rolling them across a precision-ground glass plate. If there's a wobble of even a hair's width, it goes in the bin, Julian remarks, his eyes focused. He lubricates the camshaft with a specialized high-zinc assembly lube, a thick, sticky green substance that ensures the metal surfaces won't touch during the critical first seconds of operation. As he installs the cylinder heads, he uses a high-precision digital torque wrench. The tool emits a sharp beep as each bolt reaches its specified tension, followed by an additional 90-degree turn to stretch the bolts into their final, permanent grip. This is the clamping force that will hold back thousands of pounds of explosive pressure. He then moves to the ancillaries, the twin SU carburetors. These are the lungs of the Rolls-Royce. Julian has completely rebuilt them, replacing the ancient, brittle diaphragms with modern Vuitton components that can handle today's ethanol-blended fuels. He polishes the brass dashpots until they gleam like gold, ensuring the pistons inside slide with a syrupy smoothness. Now comes the moment of truth. The engine is rigged to a temporary fuel cell and a heavy-duty battery. Julian checks the oil pressure one last time by priming the pump manually until he sees the gauge flicker. He looks at the camera, a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. "This is where 30 years of silence ends," he says. He touches the starter solenoid with a screwdriver. The heavy starter motor groans, turning over the massive displacement of the V8. For a few seconds, there is only the mechanical whirring, and then, with a soft huff of air, the engine fires. It doesn't scream like a race car, it hums with a deep, subsonic resonance that vibrates the very floor of the garage. Julian adjusts the idle screws, his ears tuned to the rhythm. The V8 settles into a purr so smooth that you could balance a silver coin on the intake manifold. The heart of the legend is beating again, stronger and cleaner than it ever was in 1974. We've just brought a dead giant back to life. If that sound gave you goosebumps, make sure to comment "power" below. Don't forget to like this video and share it with every gearhead you know. Subscribe now, because we are about to put this power back into the body. With the engine humming perfectly on the stand, Julian returns to the body of the Rolls-Royce. It is currently a patchwork of bare silver steel and dark gray welds. Now begins the most physically demanding and mentally taxing part of the entire restoration, the body stage. In the world of high-end restorations, good enough is a failure. Because this car will be painted in a high-gloss pearl white, any imperfection, even a ripple the size of a fingerprint, will be magnified 1,000 times under the sun. Julian applies a thin layer of premium polyester body filler to the areas where he welded in new metal. He doesn't slap it on, he uses a wide spreader to lay it down in smooth, thin sheets. Once it cures, the dust begins. Julian picks up a longboard, a sanding block nearly 2 feet long, and begins the rhythmic back-and-forth motion of block sanding. The workshop is quickly covered in a fine, white powder that looks like a winter snowstorm. Julian wears a heavy-duty respirator, his breathing the only sound in the room. This isn't work for a machine. Only the human hand can feel the subtle low spots and high spots in the metal. He uses a guide coat, a light dusting of black aerosol powder, over the filler. As he sands, the The guide coat disappears from the high areas but stays in the low spots, revealing exactly where more work is needed. He sands with 80 grit, then 120, then 220, and finally 320. His shoulders ache, and his hands are numb from the vibration, but he doesn't stop. He is chasing flatness. He runs his hand over the rear quarter panel, his eyes closed, feeling for the flow of the original design. A Rolls-Royce has long, sweeping lines that must be continuous from the headlight to the taillight. After 3 days of sanding, the car is finally ready for the next stage. It looks like a matte gray sculpture, perfectly smooth to the touch, with every weld hidden and every curve restored. The skin is finally ready to meet the paint. The atmosphere in the workshop shifts. The grinding and welding tools are put away, and the floor is scrubbed 3 times. Julian is preparing for the clean room phase. He moves the Rolls-Royce into a state-of-the-art downdraft paint booth. The lights are blindingly bright, reflecting off the stainless steel walls. Julian is dressed in a full-body white bunny suit, looking more like a scientist than a mechanic. This is a high-pressure environment. A single speck of dust or a stray hair in the primer can ruin weeks of bodywork. He uses a high-volume, low-pressure HVLP spray gun, connected to a sophisticated air filtration system that removes every trace of moisture and oil. First, he applies an etching primer, a translucent green liquid that chemically bites into the bare steel to prevent future rust. Then comes the high-build gray primer. As Julian moves the gun in steady, overlapping passes, the car begins to transform. The patchwork of metal and filler disappears, replaced by a uniform, architectural gray. This is the first time in 30 years that the Rolls-Royce has been a single, solid color. In the gray primer, the car looks like a gray ghost, a hauntingly beautiful silhouette of British luxury. Julian spends hours under the LED lights, looking for solvent pop or orange peel. He finds a tiny imperfection on the roof, a microscopic pinhole. He marks it, knowing he will have to sand the entire roof again. The primer is the foundation of the house, he explains. If the foundation is cracked, the paint will never shine. He leaves the car in the booth overnight, with the infrared heaters baked to 60 degrees Celsius to cure the chemicals. As he turns off the lights and closes the heavy steel doors, he looks through the observation window. The silver shadow sits in the dark, perfectly gray, perfectly smooth, waiting for its final royal coat of white. The preparation is over. The diamond is about to be polished. The paint booth is a cathedral of white light and sterile air. Julian stands in the center, his breathing mask hissed as it filters out the heavy chemical aroma of high-performance solvents. This is the moment that defines the entire project. If he fails here, months of bodywork are wasted. He is spraying English white, a color that isn't just a flat pigment, but a sophisticated pearl finish that requires a multi-stage application. He holds the spray gun like a master violinist holds a bow, with a grip that is firm yet incredibly sensitive to the pressure. The first coat is the base. As Julian moves the gun in a rhythmic, overlapping pattern, the gray primer disappears under a cloud of brilliant white. The car begins to glow. But this is just the foundation. Next comes the pearl layer, a translucent coating containing microscopic flakes of ceramic that will catch the light and give the Rolls-Royce its regal shimmer. Julian has to be perfect. If he stays too long in one spot, the pearl will mottle or bunch up, creating a dark shadow in the paint. He works with a focused intensity, his eyes tracking the wet edge of the paint as it flows across the massive hood. He covers the roof, the pillars, and the long, sweeping fenders, his movements as fluid as a dancer. Finally, the clear coat. This is the protective layer that gives the car its wet look depth. As the clear liquid hits the white pearl, the transformation is staggering. The Rolls-Royce looks as though it has been dipped in liquid glass. The reflections of the overhead LED lights are so sharp they look like neon tubes. Julian steps back, his heart racing. He checks every angle for runs or dust nibs. There are none. The car is flawless. It sits in the booth, radiating a pure, snowy brilliance that seems to light up the entire workshop. It is no longer a rusted relic, it is a white diamond on wheels. The cancer of the past is officially buried under layers of modern chemistry and British craftsmanship. While the paint cures in the heat of the booth, Julian moves to the upholstery room. This is a different kind of workshop, one filled with the scent of tanned hides and expensive wood oils. The original interior was a graveyard of mold, but Julian has sourced the finest Connolly leather from the same tannery that supplied Rolls-Royce in the 1970s. He is hand-stitching the seat covers using a vintage industrial sewing machine. The click-clack of the needle is the only sound as he joins the cream-colored leather panels with a contrasting piping. "Luxury isn't just about what you see," Julian says, running his hand over the soft grain. "It's about the tension in the stitch and the density of the foam." Next comes the woodwork. The original walnut veneers were warped and milked by moisture, but Julian has spent weeks carefully stripping back the old lacquer and reapplying a modern, UV-resistant high-gloss finish. He uses a rotary buffer with a fine polishing compound, moving in slow circles until the grain of the wood pops with a deep, three-dimensional fire. The wood looks like it's trapped under an inch of clear water. It is warm to the touch and perfectly smooth. He then installs the new Wilton wool carpets, thick, heavy rugs that are so plush they swallow the sound of his footsteps. This is the part of the build where the car truly regains its soul. If you can almost smell that fresh leather through the screen, hit that like button. We want to know in the comments, would you have chosen a different color for the interior, or is this cream and walnut combination the ultimate classic? Subscribe now and share this video with someone who appreciates the finer things in life. The final assembly is only moments away. Julian begins to assemble the dashboard, carefully pressing each chrome-rimmed gauge into the wood. The smith's clocks, the organ stop vent pulls, and the heavy crystal ashtrays all return to their homes. The interior is no longer a hollow cage. It is once again a royal suite, a sanctuary of silence and elegance that is ready to shield its passengers from the outside world. This is the most dangerous stage of the restoration. Julian must now take the heavy mechanical heart and the delicate chrome jewelry and install them onto a body that has a perfect, multi-thousand-pound paint job. One slip of a wrench, one dropped bolt, and the English white finish will be scarred forever. Julian uses thick magnetic blankets to cover every inch of the fenders as he prepares to drop the V8 engine back into the bay. The engine, now a gleaming masterpiece of black enamel and polished brass, hangs from the hoist. Julian works in total silence. He uses a laser level to ensure the engine mounts are perfectly aligned before slowly, millimeter by millimeter, lowering the beast into the car. The suspension compresses under the weight, the car settling onto its springs for the first time in years. Once the engine is bolted in, the dressing begins. He installs the radiator, the heavy chrome grille, and the glass headlamps. Each part is secured with stainless steel fasteners to ensure that rust will never return. The most emotional moment comes when he picks up the Spirit of Ecstasy. He has spent hours hand-polishing the Silver Lady until she shines like a mirror. He carefully screws her onto the top of the radiator shell. For the first time, the car has its identity back. Julian then moves to the doors, installing the heavy glass and the complex window regulators. He spends 4 hours just adjusting the gap of the driver's door, ensuring it closes with that famous Rolls-Royce thunk, a sound that is more like a vault door than a car. The chrome trim is snapped into place along the waistline, providing a sharp, metallic contrast to the snowy white paint. The car is 95% complete. It sits on its new white wall tires, looking like a king that has just returned from exile. Julian stands back, wiping a layer of assembly grease from his hands. He is exhausted, his muscles ache, but as he looks at the reflection of the workshop in the car's paint, he knows he has achieved the impossible. The workshop lights have been dimmed, replaced by high-intensity mobile LED scan tools that Julian moves slowly across the body of the Rolls-Royce. We have reached the final stage, the search for microscopic imperfections. In the world of ultra-luxury restoration, the difference between excellent and perfect is often 40 hours of labor. Julian is currently performing a multi-stage paint correction. Even though the English white pearl was sprayed perfectly, he is now jeweling the paint, using a dual-action polisher and a microscopic abrasive to remove every tiny ripple, ensuring the surface is as flat and reflective as a frozen lake. The sound is a low, hypnotic whirring, and the smell is the clean, chemical scent of high-end carnauba wax and ceramic coatings. But the perfection isn't just on the surface. Julian is deep inside the trunk, checking the complex hydraulic pumps that control the self-leveling suspension. He listens for the faintest hiss of a leak, his ears tuned to the mechanical heartbeat of the car. He tests the electrical systems, the Lucas wiring that he spent weeks replacing. He flips the toggle switches on the walnut dashboard. One by one, the amber lights of the gauges glow with a warm, vintage hue. He tests the air conditioning, feeling the blast of cold air that is now silent and powerful. A Rolls-Royce is designed to isolate you from the world, Julian explains, his voice low and tired but filled with pride. If you can hear the car working, I haven't done my job correctly. He spends 3 hours just on the clock, ensuring that the famous ticking of the clock is the only thing audible at 60 miles per hour. Finally, he applies the ceramic coating. This is a liquid glass shield that bonds to the paint, giving it a permanent, wet look and protecting Julian's hard work from the elements for the next decade. He wipes away the residue with a fresh microfiber towel, his movements slow and deliberate. He is exhausted, physically drained from months of 12-hour days, tackling rust that seemed invincible and mechanical failures that seemed terminal. But as he stands back and sees his reflection in the white fender, the fatigue vanishes. The car is no longer a collection of parts, it is a singular, breathing entity. Every gap is perfect, every stitch is straight, and every bolt is torqued to perfection. The white diamond is ready for its coronation. The heavy steel doors of the workshop slide open, and for the first time in 30 years, the 1970s Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow feels the warmth of the English sun. As Julian slowly drives the car out into the light, the transformation is nothing short of a miracle. Where there was once flaking, yellowed paint and orange cancerous rust, there is now a shimmering, pearlescent white finish that reflects the green countryside like a mirror. The chrome grille, which was once dull and pitted, now catches the sunlight with a blinding brilliance, led by the silver spirit of ecstasy who looks as though she is finally home. The car glides across the asphalt in total, eerie silence. The V8 engine, which Julian spent hundreds of hours rebuilding from a seized block of iron, purrs with a subsonic dignity. From the outside, it looks like a royal carriage. From the inside, Julian is surrounded by the scent of fresh Connolly leather and the warm glow of polished walnut. He looks at the before photos on his phone, the image of a rotted blue-tarped wreck sitting in the dirt, and then looks at the steering wheel in his hands. He has saved a piece of history. He has proven that with enough grit, sweat, and British steel, nothing is truly lost. The White Diamond isn't just a car anymore. It's a testament to the fact that legends never truly die, they just wait for the right person to wake them up. And there she is, from a rusted grave to a royal rebirth. This has been the journey of a lifetime, and I am so glad you were here to witness every weld, every stitch, and every drop of sweat. If you found this restoration as emotional and inspiring as I did, please do 3 things for us right now. First, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another legend coming back to life. Second, like this video to help us reach more car enthusiasts around the world. Third, comment below, what car should we rescue from the rust next? A classic Jaguar? A vintage Bentley? You decide. And finally, share this video with your friends and family. Let's show the world that craftsmanship still matters. Thank you for watching, thank you for your support, and we will see you in the next build. This is Julian, signing off from the workshop. Drive safe.